Imagine a former U.S. president goes on global television and casually refers to your country, along with, your biggest geopolitical rival, as a hellhole.
Right. Not exactly a diplomatic triumph.
No, not at all.
Mm.
And if you look at the traditional playbook of statecraft, the immediate next steps are completely scripted,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. It's a whole routine.
You get the widespread public outrage.
Yeah.
You have foreign ministries summoning ambassadors in the middle of the night. A flurry of incredibly tense, carefully worded diplomatic cables.
The standard operating procedure.
Exactly. But what happens when 1.4 billion people look at that playbook, completely throw it out the window, and instead decide to, well, weaponize the insult into a masterclass of self-deprecating internet comedy?
It's incredible.
Right. Today, we are looking at the exact moment the traditional, rigid framework of diplomacy essentially short-circuited.
Mm-hmm.
We're making way for what you could call the Desi clapback. And, just to welcome you to the deep dive, we are taking a fascinating, honestly hilarious, and surprisingly layered look at how internet culture digests geopolitical insults today.
Yeah, and it's a fundamental shift in how international friction is processed. We're working with an incredibly rich piece of source material today.
You really are.
It's a blog post from a site called Democracy for Nepal, dated April 28, 2026.
Written by an author named Paramendra, right?
Yes, Paramendra. And the piece is titled, and I love this title, Trump calls India and China hellholes. Indians respond with peak Desi chaos.
It's such a perfect title.
It really is. And before we even touch the politics of this, I think it's crucial to set some ground rules.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you're listening, it's really important to know our goal here isn't to, validate or litigate the hellhole label.
Right.
We aren't endorsing any political viewpoints here.
Exactly. We're staying completely impartial on the politics.
Right. Our job is just to analyze the sheer sociological mechanics of the reaction.
And the comedic phenomena described in the text, yeah.
Yeah.
But to do that, it's vital to understand exactly who is documenting this chaos.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because what looks like just a funny internet article actually reveals a lot about how nations process their own identities today.
Mm.
And, Paramendra isn't just running some pop culture meme aggregator.
No, not at all.
If you scroll through the sidebar of his site, you're hit with this wall of incredibly dense, macro-level futurism.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah. He's writing massive treatises, titles like Lumina AI, the trillion-dollar sun projecting how the India-U.S. alliance is going to pivot global trade.
He's dissecting quantum computing.
He's writing about Kalkiism, the economic and spiritual blueprint, the $500 billion pivot, and agentic AI.
Right, highly intellectual, tech-focused material.
And even his personal background carries heavy geopolitical weight. Back in, the mid-2000s?
Yeah, 2005, 2006.
Right. He was practically the only full-timer organizing for Nepal's democracy and social justice movements among a diaspora of 200,000 Nepalis in the U.S.
Which is a massive undertaking.
It's huge. So my immediate question is, wait, so we have an author writing about quantum computing, AI escaping velocity, and macroeconomics who is suddenly pausing to write about internet memes and Swiggy deliveries.
It seems disconnected.
Right. How does this fit together? It feels like a massive step down in intellectual weight.
See, what's fascinating here is I'd actually argue the exact opposite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's not stepping down at all. He's recognizing that the arena of global influence has physically moved.
Moved to where? Exactly. The internet.
Exactly. If you're a macro thinker observing global shifts, you realize that what we casually dismiss as internet tamasha, the chaotic, meme-driven spectacle, is no longer just a byproduct of geopolitics.
That's not just the peanut gallery anymore.
No, it is a geopolitical discourse. He's tracking this because the formal channels, the mahogany rooms, and the press briefings, they are increasingly just theater.
Just going through the motions.
Right. The actual cultural operating system of a nation, its insecurities, its rivalries, its resilience, is actively playing out in these hyperspeed digital reactions.
I hear that, but, aren't we giving a bit too much credit to random people firing off tweets from their couches?
I don't think so.
But at the end of the day, treaties are still signed by heads of state, right?
Right.
Trade tariffs are still implemented by bureaucrats. Are we confusing viral internet noise with actual tangible geopolitical leverage?
We aren't confusing them, we're acknowledging the blur between them. Obviously, a meme doesn't literally sign a trade deal.
Right, of course.
But statecraft doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Politicians and diplomats are hyper-aware of public sentiment.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
When a massive population bypasses the traditional media filters and creates a dominant viral narrative that laughs off a superpower's insult, it fundamentally alters the diplomatic leverage of that superpower.
Because they can't use fear or prestige anymore.
Exactly. It strips away the intimidation factor. The fact that a tech and trade-focused intellectual is documenting this shows that you can't understand future economies without understanding how everyday people process foreign policy online.
Okay, let's test that theory by looking at how this digital crowd actually processed the insult. Because the author breaks the internet's reaction down into these incredibly distinct mindsets or factions.
He does, and they are so varied.
And the first one is, frankly, baffling to me. He calls them the selective listeners.
Oh, the selective reading comprehension.
Right. These are people who applied the kind of ruthless, laser-focused filtering you'd normally need to pass the intense civil service exams in India.
The UPSC prelims.
Exactly. But they applied it directly to a geopolitical slight. So Trump reportedly said, India and China are hellholes.
And what did this group hear?
They literally only registered the words, China is a hellhole.
They completely redacted the rest of the sentence from their reality.
Completely. To the point where they're celebrating online, passing around virtual ladoos, sweets, and praising the guy for having the guts to call out their rival.
Completely forgetting the part where India was also insulted.
Yeah, the author compares it to forgetting a bad EMI reminder.
Right.
It's like a scenario where your boss calls an all-hands meeting to say your entire department is utterly useless.
Right.
But because your worst office rival was also included in the insult, you throw a party.
You're just thrilled they got yelled at.
Yes. How does a collective consciousness just ignore a direct insult to itself just to savor a hit on an enemy?
Well, because you have to look at the deep historical context validated here.
Okay.
What the author is tapping into is a deeply ingrained civilizational rivalry. The India-China dynamic isn't just a modern border dispute.
Right, it goes way back.
It is a millennia-old negotiation of regional dominance. So when an external superpower steps in and degrades your rival, that external validation can totally short-circuit your own immediate defense mechanisms.
Wow.
It's zero-sum psychology at a national scale.
So, like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, even if he's actively insulting me while he says it.
Exactly. The author notes that this single offhand comment essentially validated 5,000 years of civilizational rivalry.
That is wild.
It shows how regional rivalries can completely override national pride in the hierarchy of internet reactions, as the author sums it up perfectly. Diwali came early.
Diwali came early. That's hilarious. The sheer, I don't know, caloric value of seeing their rival insulted was higher than the cost of their own ego hit.
It's like a geopolitical painkiller.
But celebrating an enemy's insult is kind of the easy part, right? It's petty, but it makes a twisted kind of sense.
Sure.
What's truly wild to me is the second group the author identifies, the geopolitical optimists.
Oh, yes.
Because unlike the selective listeners, these people actually read the full statement.
They heard the whole thing.
They did. They recognized their own country was insulted alongside China, and somehow through sheer mental gymnastics, they were even happier.
The enlightened optimists, this is where proximity becomes power.
Right, their logic is fascinating. They looked at an insult and saw a promotion.
Superpower confirmed.
Exactly. If India is being grouped in the exact same sentence and the exact same insult as China, it means India has definitively achieved equal footing. See? We are in the same league as China now.
It's a brilliant reframe. The author even jokes that the old concept of Hindi Chini bye-bye, Indians and Chinese are brothers.
Right, the old political slogan.
Yeah, he says it made a triumphant return, not through peace talks, but through mutual mockery.
Which is so funny. And here's where it gets really interesting to me. The author paints this incredible hypothetical image of Xi Jinping and Modi Ji pushing aside centuries of complex diplomacy.
Just to text each other.
Yes,
Yeah.
exchanging awkward WeChat and WhatsApp messages saying, bye, Tumbisuna, hellhole. Like, brother, did you hear? Hellhole.
It's a hilarious image. But under the humor, it reveals a massive irony in how geopolitical validation is achieved today.
How so?
Think about how countries validated themselves historically. You proved you were a superpower by securing a permanent UN Security Council seat.
Or your GDP growth.
Exactly. Building a nuclear arsenal, putting a satellite into orbit. It was about tangible systemic achievements.
Yeah.
Now, in the cultural consciousness of the internet, validation is simply about being deemed significant enough to draw the ire of an American leader alongside your biggest competitor.
The insult itself is irrelevant.
Right. It's the proximity to power within the insult that is being celebrated. The author connects this to the concept of Viksit Bharat, the drive toward a developed India.
Oh, okay.
For this specific internet faction, nothing confirmed that trajectory quite like being equally condemned alongside the massive economic engine of China.
It's entirely about who you were standing next to when the mud gets thrown.
Yes, exactly.
But of course, the author makes it very clear that not everyone was, popping champagne to celebrate.
Yeah.
Because then we hit the third faction, and this is where the gloves completely come off.
The segment of the population that reacted with pure, unadulterated outrage.
Right. They heard the insult, processed it, and were deeply offended. They flooded the internet, projecting the most idealized, traditional image of India.
Defending the nation's honor.
Exactly. They're furiously typing about the land of yoga, the ancient spice routes, the world's largest functioning democracy. But the author immediately punctures the self-seriousness of this outrage with some brilliant observational comedy.
The sheer irony of the outrage.
It's so good. He points out the hilarious juxtaposition of these furious patriots manufacturing pro-India memes at speeds that would make ISRO proud.
ISRO being the Indian Space Research Organization.
Right, so they're working at rocket scientist speed. But physically, where are they?
Sitting in traffic.
They're sitting completely motionless in agonizing traffic jams that make Los Angeles look like a German Autobahn.
It perfectly captures the cognitive dissonance of modern nationalism, doesn't it?
Totally.
You have the pristine digital defense of the nation floating up in the cloud, while the physical reality of the citizen defending it is stuck in an infrastructure gridlock.
But the author notes this purely defensive posture quickly morphed into the Desi clapback.
The counter-roast.
Yes, it evolved. It wasn't just about defending India anymore. Indians exercised free speech with a distinct Desi flavor. They fired back at the U.S.
And they went straight for granular, personal, hyper-local roasts.
Exactly. They fire back declaring Mar-a-Lago as a hellhole.
Right.
They claimed his golf courses have more sand than Rajasthan.
Yeah.
And his steaks are tougher than buffalo meat at a dusty roadside dhaba.
The specificity of that is just amazing.
And the attitude here is what kills me. The author describes the incredible confidence of these clapbacks, comparing it to a street vendor who just doubled the price of chai during rain.
Which is such an accurate power dynamic.
Right. If you've ever been caught in a sudden downpour and sprinted to a tiny tea stall, you know the vendor holds all the cards.
Oh, absolutely.
They look you dead in the eye, double the price, and they know you're going to pay it. It's unapologetic situational dominance. But let me push back here for a second.
Sure.
Is this really a new form of diplomacy? Or is this just standard run-of-the-mill internet trolling? Like every country has internet trolls, right? Is there a cultural significance to this specific style of retaliation?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, yes, there is massive cultural significance. This is the democratization of international relations.
Okay, how do you mean?
For decades, the Global South has existed in a diplomatic framework where the West essentially dictates the terms. If a Western leader insults a developing nation, the traditional response is a highly formalized, polite rebuttal.
Right, because you don't want to lose foreign aid.
Exactly. The power dynamic is deeply asymmetrical. You swallow the insult to keep the global economy churning, but this Desi clapback obliterates that barrier.
By just shouting back on Twitter.
Right. The author describes this new reality as a 6-lane highway with no speed limits and plenty of honking.
I love that visual.
It shows a populace completely unafraid of global hierarchies. The phrase the author highlights is, spade for a spade, to hellhole, main hellhole.
You're a hellhole, I'm a hellhole.
Exactly. It neutralizes the perceived superiority of the West, not by debating their foreign policies, but by relentlessly mocking your golf courses.
It brings them right down to eye level. Game over, beta, as the author writes. It's the ultimate democratization of disrespect.
It really is.
But while the trolls are waging this digital turf war, the author introduces us to a fourth faction. And if you're listening, I think this group might be the most relatable element of the entire saga.
The WhatsApp pothole philosopher.
Yes. These small, brave tribe of somber souls who emerged from WhatsApp University.
The pragmatists, the ones who refuse to get swept up in the grand nationalistic narrative.
Right. While everyone else is either celebrating, defending, or counterattacking on the global stage, these guys read the international insult, look at their own immediate surroundings, and sigh deeply.
And what do they say?
They type, maybe Trump is talking about the potholes in Bangalore.
It is a phenomenal pivot. It's the Bengaluru reality check.
It's the ultimate reality check. The author points out that if you've ever tried to drive a vehicle through Bengaluru during the monsoon season, the word hellhole starts to sound less like a slur and more like generous praise.
It's notoriously bad.
He highlights this one specific legendary uncle post that went viral in these family group chats. It said, "Forget China. Fix the road from Silkboard to Whitefield first. Then we can argue about superpowers."
Which is so deeply specific.
Right. For context, that specific stretch of road is globally infamous for soul-crushing traffic. Its rapid economic growth totally outpacing civic planning. And this deeply hyper-local complaint got, as the author notes, 3 likes and 17 forwards from frustrated cab drivers.
That detail is brilliant.
But so what does this all mean? The world is debating international relations, and this guy just desperately wants his daily commute fixed. Does this show a fundamental disconnect between national pride and local governance?
I love this point. I don't think it's a disconnect at all. It reveals how massive global statements are immediately pulled down to the most granular, frustrating realities of daily life.
So they're using it.
Yes. National pride is abstract. A pothole ruining your car's suspension is tangible. This pothole philosophy is a brilliant civic mechanism.
Okay, walk me through that.
These citizens are taking this massive, glaring international spotlight, a spotlight brought on by a foreign leader's insult, and they are forcefully pivoting it away from abstract nationalism to demand local civic accountability.
Oh, wow.
They are essentially saying, you want to talk about how the world views us? Let's talk about the fact that the government hasn't fixed this road.
It's incredibly pragmatic. Forget the UN Security Council. Fix the Silkboard Junction.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this organic, chaotic digital ecosystem churning out these massive, distinct reactions. The selective listeners, the optimists, the clapback trolls, and the pothole philosophers.
A very busy internet.
Very busy. But while the internet is having this organic moment, the institutional media cannot help but get involved. And this brings us to the media ecosystem's tamasha.
The industrialization of the outrage.
Yes. The author paints this picture of TV debates being organized faster than Swiggy can deliver biryani.
Which is very fast.
Extremely fast. And you have the spin doctors, the anchors screaming over each other, the experts explaining. But the author highlights what has to be the most absurd rhetorical gymnastics of the entire news cycle.
Oh, the Aishan logic.
Yes. He quotes a panelist who seriously suggested that Trump was actually, in a roundabout way, praising India's resilience.
There's breathtaking spin.
This pundit claimed, and I quote, "Only a true hellhole could produce so many Aishans and doctors who keep America running."
To essentially argue that your environment is so uniquely punishing that it acts as a crucible to forge these brilliant engineering minds.
Right.
And therefore, an insult to that environment is actually a compliment to your durability.
It's like saying, thank you for acknowledging how terrible our infrastructure is. It's what makes us invincible.
It's so twisted.
And the fallout of this media frenzy is just as ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of the week, this single offhand quote had morphed into 17 different conspiracy theories,
Natural.
3 pitched Bollywood scripts, and 1 extremely confused monologue by journalist Rajdeep Sardesai.
It just snowballs.
It really does. And it's amazing how a single remark feeds an entire industrial complex of news and entertainment. But this brings me back to Paramendra, the author.
Okay.
How does this connect to his other writings? You know, the macro level tech stuff, things like the convergence age or digital sales funnels, because it feels like the news networks aren't even trying to report the news, they're just feeding a machine.
They absolutely are feeding a machine, and the digital sales funnel is the perfect synthesis for this.
How so?
If you analyze the news media through the architecture of a sales funnel, the algorithmic mechanics are identical.
Like an e-commerce funnel.
Exactly. An e-commerce funnel is designed to catch a massive amount of broad attention at the top, process that attention, and convert it into a transaction at the bottom.
Okay, right.
In this scenario, the news media operates exactly like a digital sales funnel. Trump's quote is the ultimate top-of-funnel cultural moment.
It catches everyone's attention.
Right. It's massive and provocative. The media catches that raw material, and then they filter it down through these structured panels, the screaming matches, the bizarre spin about Aishans.
They just churn it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what comes out the bottom of the funnel? Highly engaging, deeply monetizable outrage. The media has zero incentive to resolve the diplomatic tension because resolving it ends the spectacle.
They want to prolong the tamasha.
Because the tamasha is what generates the ad revenue. So the author, with his background in tech and commerce, sees the exact same algorithmic behavior in the primetime newsroom that he sees in a digital marketing campaign.
That makes perfect sense. They aren't diplomats. They're just outrage merchants optimizing their conversion rates.
Precisely.
Which leads us to the final and honestly most profound takeaway from the author's analysis. The grand synthesis.
Yes, the Pavbaji theory of cultural resilience.
I love this part. He pulls all these disparate threads, the trolls, the optimists, the philosophers, the media, spin into this single metaphor, the moral of the story.
It's a phenomenal metaphor that perfectly encapsulates the whole phenomenon.
Paramendra states that you should never underestimate the ability of Indians to take an insult from an outsider, throw it into a blender, remix it with sharp humor, self-roast, and whataboutism.
And serve it back.
Yes, and serve it back to the world, hotter than a plate of pav bhaji with extra butter.
For those unfamiliar, pav bhaji is an incredibly popular, intensely flavorful street food. It's essentially a complex mashup of ingredients, cooked down on a massive griddle and served aggressively hot.
It's the perfect culinary equivalent to how they process this insult.
It really is.
But he establishes what seems to be the ironclad golden rule of this cultural ecosystem. He says Trump might call it a hellhole, but only Indians are allowed to say it first.
And that distinction is everything. It's the critical difference between an in-group critique and an out-group attack. Right. It's a universal human dynamic, really. You can complain bitterly about your own family, you can call your brother an idiot, but the second a neighbor steps onto your porch and insults your brother...
We close ranks and attack the neighbor.
Exactly. The author is highlighting that exact same dynamic, just scaled up to a massive geopolitical level. The right to self-deprecation is a privilege earned by actually living in the daily reality of the place.
You have to earn the right to complain.
Right. It is not an opening for an outsider to cast a judgment.
And the final imagery he leaves us with is just a masterpiece. It's the perfect encapsulation of the text.
The guy eating the vada pav?
Yes. He pictures a citizen fiercely arguing online about why their hellhole is inherently better than China's hellhole, while physically stuck in a pothole the size of a swimming pool, aggressively eating a vada pav.
It's such a vivid image.
And he signs off the piece with, Jai Hind, Jai Hellhole, victory to India, victory to the hellhole. I just have to marvel at the sheer layers of this coping mechanism.
It's deeply layered.
It's not simple blind defensiveness, it is weaponized self-awareness. They're taking the insult, claiming total ownership of it, and using it as a shield.
Which forces us to ask a really difficult question about the nature of national identity.
Okay, what's the question?
Traditionally, we assume national identity is built entirely on the things a country is actively proud of.
Yeah. Historic victories, space programs, economic milestones.
The pristine achievements, the yoga, the spices, the Isesians. But this entire text suggests something far more complex.
What's that?
It suggests that a profound, deeply connective tissue of national identity is actually forged by how a populace collectively laughs at what they suffer through.
Wow. So the shared struggle is the actual glue.
The shared struggle is far more potent than the shared victory. The agonizing traffic jams, the monsoon potholes, the global insults, that shared ability to manufacture a hyper-specific meme while sitting in gridlock builds a cultural resilience that is arguably stronger than just reading about a GDP increase in a newspaper.
That is incredibly poignant. It turns the struggle itself into the foundation of the culture.
Exactly.
Well, we've traced an unbelievable arc today. We started with the selective listeners happily ignoring reality because civilizational rivalry offered a better dopamine hit.
And virtual ladus?
Yes. We looked at the geopolitical optimists who viewed an insult as an invitation to the superpower club with their WhatsApps.
We waded through the fierce Mar-a-Lago roast.
The Desi clapbacks, yeah. And we sat in the silkboard traffic jams with WhatsApp philosophers demanding local accountability over global prestige.
We saw how the institutional media processes all of that organic chaos into a monetizable sales funnel.
And finally, how the ability to remix an insult with self-aware humor, the Pav Bhaji theory, is the ultimate sign of a resilient national identity. It really proves that a single blog post beautifully captured the chaos, humor, and resilience of a nation processing a slight.
It really is a fascinating slice of modern statecraft.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final provocative concept to mull over on your own. We've seen how nations and their citizens are increasingly interacting almost exactly like rival sports fans online.
Using high-speed memes, self-roasting, and humor to deflect international insults.
Right. So the question you have to ask yourselves is this. Does this mimification of diplomacy ultimately make the world safer because it diffuses real volatile geopolitical tension through laughter and absurdity?
Mhm.
Or does it make the world infinitely more dangerous because it reduces incredibly complex real-world foreign policy to viral punchlines that no one takes seriously until it is far too late?
That is a brilliant and slightly terrifying question to leave on. The traditional diplomatic chessboard has been completely flipped over.
It really has. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking for the humor in the hidden depths in the daily noise, and we'll catch you next time.